So Zohan Mamdani is being celebrated across South Asian and broader global South diasporas as a historic win. He is Ugandan-born, Muslim, South Asian, democratic socialist, targeted by intense Islamophobic attacks and openly pushing redistribution in the heart of US empire. And at the same time, his story is also one of transnational elite circulation. He's the son of a famous post-colonial intellectual and a renowned filmmaker. He's raised between Kampala, Cape Town, and New York, gone to elite schools, has comfortable mobility. So how do you read figures like Mandamni? Do you see global South elites who rise into Northern institutions as potential vehicles for genuinely decolonial politics, or mostly as instances of elite capture? What criteria would you use to distinguish between the two?
The criteria for me is very simple. It's authenticity. The first time I ever saw Mamdani on video, 3 days before the election, he did a big walk down the length and breadth of New York. And he was meeting different people and shaking hands and sort of like handing out flyers and stuff like that. And there was this big, social media campaign that his election campaign ran for this walk. And that was the first time I saw him like interacting with people basically and like how he holds himself in his body language and etc. And as I said, my criteria is authenticity. And the first time I saw him in that way interacting with the public, I didn't trust him. So call it what you will, women's intuition, etc. Candace Owens talks about this a lot. She's just like, something's off about this guy. Like, that's how I first had this impression about him, and then I became very interested in his partner. Why is his partner on his side? Like, what does she have going for her? Because this is not an authentic person. That was my instinct. And then, you know, in terms of like other brown or black people who have entered into halls of power, this is not different from the case of the Obamas, from the case of the Sunaks in the UK, from the case of whoever the current conservative leader in Britain is, who is actually African and spouting white supremacist colonial nonsense. So it really doesn't matter what color of skin you are. As we say, you can be a white supremacist, whatever ethnicity you come from. This is doesn't disqualify you from that. And for somebody like Mamdani to rise up talking about, socialist ideologies, that some people would say communist, but it's really more on a center socialism light kind of narrative, which is very, I think, trying to emulate the Nordic social democratic idea of how like communities should be governed at a city level. I mean, this is a popular line. This is a populist ideology. And so it makes sense that if you want to win an election, you should go with a popular idea. Similarly, a lot of US presidents have won their presidency by campaigning for anti-war. And when they enter office, one of the very first things that they do is continue a war or to start a war. So what can we say about politics and politicians, right? So Mamdani found a way in his election campaign to become the mayor of New York. He comes from the background that he comes from. He's from an elite class of brown and black people. He happens to be a Muslim who knows how devoted he is in his religion. He definitely speaks different languages that Muslims associate with, and he's able to hold himself in a sort of attitude that allows him to speak to working class people, even though he's not really working class himself. He talks about issues that people want him to talk about as a politician. So again, you're, doing well as a populist politician. campaigning on populist issues such as cost of living, affordability crisis, population density, etc. All these things that make, the daily experience of living in New York difficult for most people because he's running for the mayor of New York. So the reality is he knows that when he enters into office, he will find it very difficult to implement, even if he is genuine about them, which I doubt, the ideas that he has, the ideas that he campaigned upon. And I know this, or I think this because he's funded by Soros. Alex Soros came out about a week ago with a picture of them together, smiling, obviously, because he's always smiling, and saying, like, we're going to do great things together, kind of thing. And, the Soros family is one that has done regime change operations on so many countries. They're the ones who were complicit helping and generating a lot of those NGO narratives in Ukraine leading up to the Maidan coup, for example, in 2010, 2011, 12, all the way up to the coup in 2014 that led to the destruction of Europe, the destruction of NATO, literally. And this is Soros. Like, he does this for breakfast, and now his son has taken over and is a more radical version of George Soros himself. And so here he is, the backer of Mamdani, because how else would he be able to go around and win elections in some of the hardest to win areas of the US, which is long captured by especially Zionist elite. So what can we say? The Zionist elite have won. That's my take on Mamdani.
It was also very similar to me, like this instinct. I haven't done any research. The first time I heard about him was on LinkedIn by seeing some posts from people familiar with decoloniality. They were like rooting for him and really cheering. And I saw that photo of the big smile. And in the moment I saw that, I was like, there's something off here. And then I searched for the background. And it's not to say that like privileged people can be authentic or really committed to decolonization or justice agendas, but I think, as you said, it's very hard to believe. I'm really cynical about it, given his background, given, as you said, like to win an election in New York City, how, if you are really committed and true to your agenda, I can see many compromises to be able to get to that position. Like you need to kind of bend to power to reach where he is. So I don't know, that makes me be very cynical around, especially being immersed into elite global north circles. With time, I think that saying of the fish can question the water he's surrounded by, I think that's very, very true. And I've seen that happening so many times with global south people that move to global north and spend many, many, many years there, like decades, and start absorbing a lot of that Western thinking without realizing that they are reproducing that. So yeah, I totally agree with you around that disbelief. Yeah, and I think some of the points you brought up are really, really important and made me question this whole. I think global South elites who go to the global North for many years need to be extra kind of attentive to the surroundings and how kind of absorbing that without realizing, as I said before.
I think it's really hard if you are, for example, a global South elite who realize that you've, drank too much of the Kool-Aid and you're kind of like in too deep with your expectations of life or like what health looks like or what happiness looks like or what, consumption looks like. It's very easy, just take yourself out of the equation. Just take a back seat and say like, I don't think I need to be the one to make decisions here. Maybe other people who have a different view of like what sustainability is and how we can govern ourselves in a healthier way. Maybe they should take that front seat because clearly this mode is not working. It has led to a societal collapse, planetary systems collapse. Just take yourself out of the equation. I don't know why that's so hard. It comes back down to face. That's what we say in Asia. Like, you don't want to lose your social standing. You don't want to look bad in front of others, etc. In Chinese, the word is 面子, literally like your face. You don't want to lose face. You want to essentially uphold this narrative that I am an elite, I have access to wealth, I have access to, higher up people in the hierarchy, because I am a good person, because I am smart, because I'm good for society. So society should want me as their elite. And this is kind of the entire thinking behind like philanthropy, right?
Yeah.
There needs to be this like, laundering of the narrative to be able to look good. Because if you don't do that, and if you look too much, like an evil rich person, then you're going to be a target. And you're going to be an easy target. And you're going to have to pay a lot for security. And you're going to potentially be one of the first to suffer when it comes time for revolution, basically. So this is, on one hand, like an insurance policy so that they're not being cannibalized when the revolution comes, and also so that they can continue profiting in the ways that they continue to profit. So a lot of the situation for Mamdani, for example, we may not know today. It may come out in 10 years, in 20 years, who knows? All this stuff with Obama was kind of like coming out before he was elected, but they controlled so much of the media on the left as well in the US that it was hard to know. At the end of the day, somebody like Zoran Mamdani or Rishi Sunak, as I said, these people are based in the global north. It doesn't really matter whether it's a brown guy or a white guy. It's kind of just the same situation. Well, to be honest, Rishi Sunak never did a 180 because he was always on the conservative line. So the difference with Mamdani is that he has a socialist line, or what in the US is considered as socialism. And so this is a trigger to many things, but the reality is he believes in capitalism. This is somebody who needs to be seen in the context of his reality. How much that affects the Global South, I don't think a lot. I mean, Global South has a long history of celebrating, brown people's achievement or like Black excellence or whatever. And it all it means is that you are succeeding in a colonial world order. So yeah, speaks to how colonized we are.
Absolutely.